The vote lasted 32 seconds. That was all it took to decide whether billions would live or burn. Across the spiral arm, entire civilizations paused mid-rotation. Trade lanes went silent. Military channels muted. Even pirate enclaves tuned into the Grand Assembly broadcast. Because this vote was not about sanctions. It was not about tariffs. It was about erasure. Inside the Celestial Accord's central chamber, a structure so vast it required its own artificial horizon, thousands of species occupied tiers of floating platforms. Bioluminescent delegates shimmered. Silicon mines pulsed with internal computation. Organic empires shifted uneasily in their nutrient atmospheres. At the center hung a single projection. Proposal 7719A. Classification: Destabilizing Expansionist Alliance. Recommended response: Total military neutralization. And beneath it, target: Human-led Frontier Alliance. A murmur swept through the chamber. They had grown too quickly. Too efficiently. Too cooperatively. 10 cycles ago, the Frontier Alliance was a footnote, a defensive pact between three overlooked systems on the edge of mapped space. A mining world harassed by slavers. A trade species constantly bullied by larger powers. And Earth. No one had taken them seriously. Until convoys stopped disappearing. Until piracy rates in their sector dropped to zero. Until member species began thriving. The Alliance did not conquer territory. They fortified it. They did not demand tribute. They offered protection. They did not threaten. They invited. And species, minor, overlooked, exploited species, had accepted. The growth unsettled the old powers. Because empires expand through fear. The Alliance expanded through trust. And that was far more dangerous. A chime echoed across the chamber. Voting initiated. Lights flared across thousands of platforms. 32 seconds. That was all it took for fear to align. The projection shifted. Unanimous sanction approved. Total military response authorized. A wave of relief swept through the dominant powers. Finally, the anomaly would be corrected. The spiral arm would return to balance. Because the Frontier Alliance had crossed an invisible line. They had become strong enough to matter. In the Sol system, no one cheered. No one panicked either. Earth's orbital bastion, an immense defensive ring studded with weapon arrays and sensor spines, remained calm beneath the stars. Admiral Rowan Hale stood at the central command platform, hands clasped behind his back. He did not look surprised. A young operations officer swallowed hard. "Sir, it's unanimous." Hale exhaled slowly. "Of course it is." Across the command deck, massive holographic displays lit up. Coalition fleet mobilizations. Carrier groups exiting dockyards. Dreadnought formations aligning along hyperspace corridors. 3 primary invasion vectors. 18,000 confirmed warships. More assembling. The largest coordinated military action in modern galactic history. A silence settled over the bridge. Not fear. Recognition. Because this moment had been predicted. Simulated. Wargamed. Over and over again. "Begin Phase 1, Hale said quietly. No alarms blared. No frantic shouting. Instead, thousands of encrypted channels activated across Alliance space. Deep space listening arrays rotated outward. Civilian evacuation routes opened, not as emergency protocols, but as pre-calculated transitions. Defense lattices that had appeared dormant for years began drawing power. From the outside, nothing looked aggressive. But beneath the surface, entire star systems shifted into readiness. An intelligence officer hesitated. "Sir, do we issue a warning?" Hale studied the hologram of the advancing fleets. "They already think this is about expansion," he said. A faint, almost tired smile crossed his face. "They forgot why we formed the Alliance." The officer frowned slightly. "Sir." Hale tapped the display. The hologram shifted. Beyond the mapped spiral arm, far past contested territories, sensor feeds revealed a region of distorted space. Stars bent around it. Light dimmed unnaturally. It moved. Slowly. Inexorably. Years ago, humanity's outer probes had detected it first. A gravitational anomaly that consumed entire systems without explosion or radiation. Just absence. 7 frontier colonies had vanished before anyone understood the pattern. That was the day Earth stopped thinking small. The Frontier Alliance had not been built for trade dominance. It had been built as a distributed shield. A redundancy network. A firewall against something the galaxy had not yet noticed. Until now. Because the coalition fleets, 18,000 warships strong, were powering weapons at a scale that would ripple across subspace. And that ripple? It would be felt. Hale turned back to the command deck. Track the invasion fleets. Yes, sir. Divert lattice arrays to standby. Yes, sir. And notify all member species. A pause. Remind them why we trained for this. Across Alliance space, a single phrase transmitted on secure channels. They voted. And beneath it, we hold. In the Grand Assembly chamber, celebrations continued. They believed they had acted decisively. They believed they had preserved order. They believed they were about to crush a rising power. They had no idea. They had just weakened the only shield standing between them. And extinction. They came in perfect formation. 18,000 warships, divided into 3 primary armadas, slipped into hyperspace like blades drawn in silence. Across the spiral arm, civilian populations watched the deployment feeds with awe. Never in recorded history had so many dominant powers agreed on anything. Now they agreed on annihilation. The objective was simple. Strike fast. Strike hard. Break the alliance before it could unify. Fleet Primus advanced through the Alios corridor, an essential hyperspace artery feeding directly into Frontier Alliance territory. Fleet Secundus targeted the Orion Gate, an alliance trade nexus linking 12 member systems. Fleet Tertius moved along the Perseid Edge, where humanity's outer defensive stations supposedly stood guard. Intelligence estimates predicted resistance would last no more than 72 hours. The galaxy expected spectacle. They did not expect silence. The first anomaly appeared at the Alios corridor. Fleet Primus exited hyperspace precisely on schedule. Except they didn't arrive where they intended. Navigation grids flickered. Spatial coordinates misaligned. Ships staggered out of transition in scattered clusters rather than disciplined ranks. Recalibrate, the Primus High Marshal barked. Long-range scans activated. That's when they saw it. A lattice. Thousands, no, tens of thousands, of small satellites suspended in a vast interlocking grid across the corridor. They had been there for years, dismissed as outdated communication buoys and navigation relays. Now they pulsed in unison. Gravitational waves rippled outward. Hyperspace folded inward like fabric under tension. Fleet Primus found itself suspended in a distortion field that bent trajectories, redirected engine thrust, and scrambled formation vectors. Weapons locked. Fire! The first salvo of plasma cannons erupted across space. The lattice absorbed the impact. Not with shields. With geometry. Energy bent along gravitational seams, dissipating across the network. The High Marshal frowned. Advance regardless. They pushed forward. And space pushed back. Ships veered without command input. Capital cruisers drifted centimeters from collision. Fighter wings spiraled off course as their targeting systems recalculated endlessly. No Alliance warships engaged them. No counterfire. Just containment. At the Orion Gate, Fleet Secundus took a more direct approach. They launched long-range planet cracker torpedoes toward the civilian infrastructure hub orbiting a gas giant. The torpedoes traveled 12 million kilometers. Then, they vanished. Not detonated. Not intercepted. Gone. Sensors spiked violently for a fraction of a second. A spatial compression pulse. The torpedoes had been folded into microsingularities and crushed into subatomic density. Secundus command recalculated. Deploy fighter assault waves. Thousands of attack craft surged forward. As they crossed a predetermined boundary, space itself shimmered. Their velocity dropped to near zero. Time dilation. Localized relativistic drag fields. Pilots reported moving as if through liquid metal. Again, no Alliance ships fired. No explosions. Just denial. Fleet Tertius met the most unsettling resistance. Nothing. They entered Alliance territory unchallenged. No mines. No barriers. No visible fleets. They advanced confidently toward the Perseid Edge defense line. That was when the broadcast arrived. Every hostile bridge screen flickered simultaneously. Admiral Rowan Hale appeared. Calm. Composed. Unarmed. You believe this alliance is a destabilizing force, he began evenly. You believe we formed to expand influence beyond our assigned sector. Behind him, star maps shifted. Energy readings. Gravitational charts. Deep space telemetry. You are incorrect. Fleet commanders muted their channels to avoid distraction. Hale continued anyway. You are not attacking an empire. A pause. You are dismantling a defensive network. The projection zoomed outward. Beyond the spiral arm. Past mapped hyperspace lanes. Into a region marked only by anomaly warnings. A dark distortion larger than multiple star systems. Stars bent around it. Light thinned unnaturally. It has been moving for 12 cycles, Hale said. It does not emit weapons fire. It does not negotiate. It consumes. The hostile commanders scoffed. Propaganda. Psychological warfare. The broadcast ended. Fleet Tertius resumed advance. Then the subspace sensors screamed. Across all three armadas, energy fluctuations spiked beyond expected parameters. The Helios lattice recorded deep space gravitational resonance. The Orion Gate arrays detected distant mass displacement. Fleet Tertius forward scouts transmitted a final message before vanishing. Unknown distortion detected, magnitude immeasurable. Static. Gone. Not destroyed. Not fragmented. Erased. The distortion had shifted course. And the combined energy surge of 18,000 warships entering active combat posture had amplified their presence like a beacon. The galaxy had rung something ancient. And something ancient had listened. Back in Sol Command, Admiral Hale studied the incoming data. No triumph crossed his face. Only inevitability. Confirm outer probe telemetry, he ordered. Confirmed, sir. It's accelerating. He nodded once. Of course it is. An officer swallowed. Sir, do we engage the coalition? Hale's gaze remained fixed on the expanding anomaly. No. A beat. We hold formation. Across Alliance space, the defense lattice reoriented, not toward the invading fleets, but outward, toward the approaching darkness. Because the galaxy believed this war was about politics. It wasn't. It was about preparation. And they had just made first contact. The first system went dark without a sound. No explosion. No radiation spike. No debris field. One moment, the outer sentinel world of Caro's Minor transmitted routine telemetry. The next, silence. Across coalition command networks, confusion erupted. Sensor malfunction. Communication blackout. Electronic warfare interference. They searched for wreckage. There was none. Long-range telescopes zoomed in. The star still burned. The planet still orbited. But everything artificial. Gone. Ships. Stations. Colonies. Erased as though they had never existed. And then the distortion moved again. Fleet Primus, still struggling inside the Helios gravitational lattice, detected the mass displacement first. High Marshal, the anomaly's vector has shifted. Toward Alliance space. No, sir. A pause. It's moving toward us. Across 18,000 coalition ships, crews stared at their forward displays. In the distance, stars bent unnaturally. Light curved around something too vast to fully resolve. Gravitational readings exceeded theoretical models. And still, the Alliance did not fire. Not one shot. Instead, their lattice intensified. Gravitational seams locked tighter. Not to trap the coalition fleet, but to stabilize the corridor. As if bracing. At the Orion Gate, Fleet Secundus experienced a surge in temporal distortion. The relativistic drag fields fluctuated violently. Alliance interference is destabilizing our weapons, a commander shouted. No, a systems analyst whispered. It's compensating. Compensating for what? Then they saw it. On the edge of sensor range, a region of absolute absence. Not darkness. Not void. Absence. Stars disappeared as it advanced, not dimmed, not obscured, simply removed from existence. Fleet Tertius remaining scouts attempted retreat. Their engines flared. They never completed the maneuver. Their signal cut off mid-transmission. No explosion. No wreckage. Just subtraction. Admiral Rowan Hale reappeared across every coalition flagship. This time, no one muted the transmission. You forgot why we formed the Alliance, he said calmly. Behind him, Alliance command decks pulsed with coordinated activity. Species of every physiology stood side by side. Avian tacticians. Silicon analysts. Aquatic navigators operating in suspended tanks. Human officers steady at their stations. We lost 7 outer colonies 12 cycles ago, Hale continued. We misidentified the anomaly as a rogue gravitational phenomenon. The hologram shifted. Data overlays revealed decades of study. Patterns. Vectors. Energy signatures. It reacts to concentrated energy emissions, Hale said. It follows military escalations. Silence gripped the coalition bridges. 18,000 warships, bristling with weapons, had just activated simultaneously. They had lit a beacon. You believed this was about territorial expansion, Hale said softly. It never was. The distortion accelerated. Gravitational shear waves rippled across space. Fleet Primus outermost ships began experiencing hull compression without visible force. Structural integrity warnings flared. Fire at it, the High Marshal roared. Thousands of weapons discharged into the approaching anomaly. The beams vanished before contact. Not absorbed. Not deflected. Consumed. The anomaly did not slow. And then, the Alliance moved. Not offensively. Defensively. The Alios lattice expanded outward, its satellites repositioning with surgical precision. At the Orion Gate, energy routing shifted from containment fields to barrier amplification. Across Alliance territory, massive shield arrays powered up, not around individual systems, but between them. Hyperspace lanes folded into layered defensive corridors. Gravitational anchors deployed across entire sectors. It was not a wall. It was a web. A distributed shield network spanning dozens of star systems. Fleet Secundus commanders stared in disbelief. This infrastructure, how long has it been in place? 12 cycles, an analyst whispered. Since the first vanished colony. The Alliance had not been expanding recklessly. They had been building redundancy. Redundant power grids. Redundant hyperspace exits. Redundant shield nodes. No single system carried the burden alone. Because no single system could survive alone. The anomaly reached the outer edge of Coalition Fleet Primus. One cruiser touched its event horizon. There was no explosion. No fragmentation. The cruiser simply flattened. Compressed into a two-dimensional smear of matter, then erased entirely. The rest of the fleet recoiled in terror. Retreat orders clashed with lattice distortions still stabilizing space. And still, the Alliance did not attack. Hale's voice returned. You dismantled our outer firewall. On every coalition screen, a projection displayed the shield network they had attempted to breach. It extended beyond Alliance territory. Outward. Toward the advancing distortion. We were not preparing to fight you, Hale said. The anomaly struck the first layer of the Alliance web. Space trembled. Shield nodes flared white-hot. Energy transferred across dozens of systems instantly, sharing the strain. Planets shook, but held. The anomaly slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. Coalition commanders realized the horrifying truth. The Alliance was not resisting them. It was shielding them. Because if the web collapsed, the anomaly would continue inward. Into unprotected coalition territory. And there would be nothing left to slow it. Fleet Primus High Marshal lowered his head slowly. We miscalculated. Hale did not gloat. He did not accuse. He simply said, "Join the grid." Behind him, Alliance engineers opened access channels. Integration protocols transmitted across subspace. The anomaly pressed harder against the defensive web. Stars dimmed. Gravity screamed. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the dominant powers understood. They had not attacked a rival empire. They had attacked the only species that had prepared for extinction. And extinction had just arrived. The first coalition world fell in 17 seconds. It wasn't even near Alliance space. It wasn't on the invasion front. It was a core system. Wealthy. Ancient. Untouched by war for centuries. Its sun flared once. Then space folded inward. Observatories across 3 sectors recorded the same impossible sight. The star did not explode. It dimmed. Its planets did not shatter. They flattened. Compressed into gravitational noise so dense it could not be analyzed. And then, the entire system vanished from astrophysical charts. Like a smudge wiped from existence. Panic surged through the coalition high command. Reallocate fleets. Reinforce the core. Counterattack the anomaly. There was nothing to counterattack. The anomaly did not behave like an enemy fleet. It did not maneuver strategically. It simply followed energy density. Military concentration. It consumed where resistance flared brightest. And right now, 18,000 warships were broadcasting like a beacon. At the Helios corridor, Fleet Primus had stopped firing. Weapons powered down. Reactor outputs reduced. Ships drifted within the stabilizing lattice, no longer trying to force their way through. For the first time, their High Marshal requested a direct channel. Admiral Rowan Hale accepted instantly. The coalition leaders appeared, no longer towering in confidence. Now calculating. Now afraid. "You said it reacts to escalation," the High Marshal began stiffly. "Yes," Hale replied. "And the defensive grid you constructed was built to diffuse its advance," Hale finished. A holographic projection unfolded between them. A massive interlinked network stretching across dozens of systems. Gravitational anchors. Energy redistribution nodes. Shield harmonics tuned to absorb and spread singularity pressure. "It cannot be destroyed conventionally," Hale explained. "But it can be delayed." "How long?" one coalition tactician demanded. "Long enough," Hale said quietly. "For evacuation." Silence settled across the transmission. Evacuation. Not victory. Not triumph. Survival. At the Orion Gate, Alliance engineers were already rerouting power. Member species fleets had formed defensive arcs not around territory, but around shared shield nodes. No one held back reserves. No one hoarded energy. Every system fed into the web. That was the secret. No single point of failure. No single hero system. The Alliance had not built strength vertically. It had built it laterally. Coalition analysts ran the numbers. Without integration into the web, their core sectors would fall within weeks. With integration, projected survival probability increased by 43%. Not guaranteed, but possible. And possible was enough. The anomaly struck the outer Alliance web again. Shield nodes flared blinding white. Entire moons dimmed as power grids siphoned energy into the barrier. Across multiple systems, gravity distorted violently. Ships shook. Planets trembled. But they held. Because strain in one system instantly distributed to dozens more. A civilization-wide brace. The High Marshal looked at Hale again. "If we integrate, we place our fleets under your command." Hale shook his head. "No." A pause. "We share command." That answer changed everything. Pride faltered. But dignity remained. The coalition leaders exchanged glances. Then one by one, they nodded. Across the spiral arm, the largest military integration in galactic history began. Coalition ships transmitted reactor harmonics to match Alliance shield frequencies. Targeting networks synchronized. Navigation matrices linked. Old rivals shared encryption keys. Hyperspace corridors realigned to feed the web rather than breach it. The Helios lattice expanded. What had once been a barrier trapping Fleet Primus now opened, allowing them to reposition as structural reinforcement. At the Orion Gate, coalition carriers deployed not fighters, but shield relays. Fleet Tertius anchored along the Perseid edge, forming a second gravitational brace. For the first time since the vote, the galaxy stopped fighting itself. The anomaly reached the primary defensive convergence point. Space warped violently. Shield harmonics screamed under strain. Entire constellations flickered as energy drained from stars to feed the web. Then, the anomaly slowed. Not stopped. Not defeated. But slowed. Its advance became measurable. Predictable. Containable. Not because of superior weapons. Because of distributed resistance. Admiral Hale addressed the unified fleets. "We built the alliance after losing 7 colonies," he said. "We invited others not for dominance, but for redundancy." The distortion pressed harder. Shield nodes flared again. This time, coalition fleets absorbed part of the load. Their reactors feeding into the web. Their ships trembling but intact. "You believed we were destabilizing galactic order," Hale continued. "We were stabilizing it." On coalition bridges, commanders watched their own power output feed into a structure they had tried to dismantle hours earlier. A firewall. And they had nearly torn it down. Another coalition border system flickered. But did not vanish. The web absorbed the surge. The anomaly stalled. Across thousands of ships, crews stared in stunned silence. It was not a victory. But it was survival. The High Marshal spoke softly, almost to himself. "We united to destroy you." Hale's voice remained steady. "And now?" The Marshal looked at the shared tactical display. The anomaly pressed against a unified defensive front, alliance and coalition interwoven. "Now," the Marshal said quietly, "we remember why you formed." And for the first time, the galaxy stood together not out of fear of each other, but fear of extinction. The web held. But barely. Across the spiral arm, stars dimmed in sequence as energy diverted into the defensive lattice. Entire moons blacked out to preserve planetary cores. Ship reactors glowed beyond safe tolerances. No one disengaged. No one retreated. The anomaly pressed harder. Space around it folded like paper under crushing gravity. Time fractured at its edges. Sensor readings collapsed into paradox. And still, the web held. Because it was no longer the Frontier Alliance's web. It was the galaxy's. At the Alios corridor, Fleet Primus locked formation along the outer brace. Once proud dreadnoughts that had arrived as conquerors now anchored as structural pylons, feeding raw power into the lattice. At the Orion Gate, Secundus carriers deployed shield amplification arrays instead of strike wings. Fighter pilots watched from cockpits as their own weapons remained cold. Fleet Tertius stabilized the Perseid edge, redirecting hyperspace currents to prevent collapse across entire sectors. Every major power, every rival, every former critic, now synchronized. The distortion surged again. A coalition cruiser at the outermost boundary began to compress. Hull plating shrieked as gravity crushed inward. Before it could flatten, the web compensated. Energy rerouted instantly from 6 distant systems. The cruiser stabilized. The crew realized what had happened. They had not been saved by their own shields. They had been saved by strangers. On Earth's orbital bastion, Admiral Rowan Hale stood unmoving as alerts cascaded across the command deck. Primary convergence point holding at 63% integrity. Coalition reinforcement grid online. Power redistribution stable. He allowed himself one quiet breath. Years ago, when the first colony vanished, humanity had faced the truth alone. They had calculated extinction probabilities, modeled survival curves, and reached a conclusion. No single species could outgun the anomaly. No single empire could outrun it. But many systems, linked, might outlast it. That was why the Alliance existed. Not for dominance. Not for glory. For density. For distributed survival. The anomaly struck the web centerline with its full mass. Stars flickered across 3 sectors. Shield harmonics screamed in layered resonance. A planetary shield on the outer rim shattered completely. The web rerouted instantly. Coalition power grids absorbed the shock. Alliance moons vented atmospheric reserves to maintain energy transfer. No one hesitated. Because now everyone understood. If the web failed, there would be no borders left to defend. The distortion slowed. Its advance reduced from kilometers per second to meters, then centimeters. Space around it shimmered violently. For the first time, its edges destabilized. Not destroyed. Not killed. But resisted. The anomaly shifted. Adjusted. Pressed once more. The web flared white-hot across half the spiral arm. And then, the distortion receded. Slowly. Gradually. As if testing the resistance one final time. Then it withdrew into deep space. Not defeated. But denied. The stars brightened again. Shield nodes dimmed from blinding white to steady blue. Across thousands of ships, silence reigned. No cheering. No victory chants. Just exhausted realization. They were alive. Coalition leaders re-established full-spectrum transmission with Alliance command. The High Marshal's voice carried no pride now. Only gravity. We nearly dismantled this network. Yes, Hale replied calmly. You could have. And if we had? Hale did not hesitate. You would not have survived long enough to regret it. Silence. Then, a new proposal appeared across every command network. Not a sanction. Not a military directive. A charter amendment. Galactic Defensive Accord, Proposal 1. Joint Infrastructure Development. Shared Anomaly Monitoring. Mandatory Distributed Shield Networks. No unilateral military escalation beyond agreed thresholds. In simple terms, no one fights alone again. The High Marshal looked at Hale. You built this without asking permission. Hale nodded once. We didn't have time to wait for consensus. A faint, weary understanding crossed the Marshal's expression. You do now. Across the spiral arm, reconstruction began immediately. Coalition engineers worked alongside Alliance specialists. Old rivals shared technology openly. Former critics adopted lattice schematics. Deep space monitoring stations multiplied tenfold. The anomaly remained out there. Dormant. Watching. But now, it would not find isolated systems. It would not find fractured empires. It would find a web. And this time, the web would be stronger. Days later, Admiral Hale addressed the unified fleets. His voice carried across every major power's command structure. We did not form the alliance to rule the galaxy, he said. We formed it because extinction does not negotiate. A pause. We invited you not to expand our strength. Another pause. But to multiply it. Across thousands of bridges, commanders who had once voted for annihilation listened in silence. The High Marshal spoke one final time. We united to destroy you. Hale's expression remained steady. And instead, he said, you remembered. The galaxy had come together in fear. It survived in unity. And from that day forward, no species would mistake preparation for ambition again. Because they had learned a quiet truth. Human alliances are not built for war. They are built for the day something worse arrives. And next time, the web would be waiting.